There were 2 minutes. I now come to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think on a day like this, we think of all of those that made so many sacrifices over the COVID pandemic, those that lost so many loved ones, and our thoughts and our prayers today are with each and every one of them. Mr Speaker, there is one reason why it is so important that this motion is debated and passed today. Because at the very heart of the scandal, there is one thing that needs to be said, one thing that needs to be heard, and it's the very reason that we all need to act. And the reason is this, that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is a liar. I genuinely don't say that lightly, and I don't say it loosely. I honestly believe that it's right that we are slow to use that word. But I equally believe that it is right that we should never be slow to say it and to call it out when it is so obviously true. Because members across this House know it to be true, and the public have long known that to be true. And that is why it needs to be said today, and why we all need to act. Because, Mr Speaker, every single day in this chamber, there are motions that come before this House which are complex and nuanced. And there are usually 2 sides to an argument and valid reasons from whichever position is proposed. But I think we can safely say that this definitively isn't one of these debates. The evidence of the motion speaks for itself. It's as clear as day. If there ever was an open and shut case, this is it. Mr Speaker, last December, the Prime Minister came to this House and denied that there were any parties in 10 Downing Street during the long COVID lockdowns. Typically and tellingly, he hid behind his staff in saying it. He told us that he was given firm reassurance that no parties had happened, that no rules had been broken. Every member of this Parliament witnessed it. The public saw it with their own eyes. And shamefully, to this very day, it is still on the record of this House. But we know the truth. And the truth contains no ifs, no buts, and no maybes. Mr Speaker, the House was misled. And so were the public. And we were all misled deliberately because the Prime Minister knew the truth. Not only were parties happening, not only was the law broken, the Prime Minister was at the very parties he denied had even happened. The truth is simple, and it's this. He lied to avoid getting caught. And once he got caught, he lied again. There is no other way to describe it. There is no other word for it. Now, Mr Speaker, I can understand that this may be a terrible truth for the government benches to hear. But it's a truth that they need to hear. And it's a truth they need to live with. And I say to the Father of the House, who I've got the utmost respect for, this has got nothing to do with any elections. This is about the behaviour of a Prime Minister in office. And much more importantly, the uncomfortable truth that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is a liar is exactly why they finally need to act and remove him from office. And other Prime Ministers, including all the predecessors as Conservative Prime Ministers, would have been long gone by now. Mr Speaker, the benches opposite put the Prime Minister in power. They have the power to remove him, and the public expect them to act. Mr Speaker, we have reached this point. A motion of contempt and a sitting Prime Minister is shocking, but unfortunately it is no surprise.
Will my right honourable friend give way?
I will happily give way.
I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for giving way. He's made an important point about the members on the benches opposite being here to listen and to see this. And regardless of the number of flushed or drained faces opposite, what does he say to those who have previously called for the Prime Minister to resign, but now, as things have got worse, have changed their position and are not here today?
Well, I'm grateful for that intervention, and I will come on to that in a little bit more detail. But I'd say to everybody, the Tory MPs that are here and those that are not here for whatever reason, is to show some moral fibre, to show a backbone, to recognise what this Prime Minister is doing to the very fabric of our democracy. And today of all days, to do the right thing and support this motion that is in the name of the Leader of the Opposition, but so many other parties in this House as well. Mr Speaker, we shouldn't forget that when the Tories put this Prime Minister into Downing Street nearly 3 years ago, the Tories knew, no, actually, it was the Conservatives that elected Boris Johnson as their leader. And the important fact, Mr Speaker, is that the Tories knew exactly the kind of person that they were putting into the highest office in the land. They knew his track record. They knew his character. They knew who he was. They knew what he was. And they still chose him as their leader. Of everyone in this House, the members opposite know better than anyone else that a trail of scandal and law-breaking was always going to define his time in office. And in these 3 short years, unfortunately those who made those predictions haven't been disappointed. The sleaze and the scandal have been 10 a penny. From lying to the Queen, to illegally prorogate Parliament, to shut this Parliament.
We've got to be careful. I've asked for moderate language, more temperate language, and lying to the Queen and bringing the Queen into. I'm not having. Ian Blackford, I want you to withdraw. I want you to just withdraw that point.
In deference to yourself, Mr Speaker, I will do so, but let's not forget the fact that the Prime Minister was found in the highest court in the land of illegally proroguing this Parliament. Stuffing the House of Lords.
As I said at the beginning, and I know the honourable member will want to stick to what I said, it is about the terms of what we are debating. We can't go beyond that. So I know he's very good, and he can stick to the script that I've explained that we do so. Ian Blackford.
I will happily take that guidance, Mr Speaker, but of course we'll reflect on the Supreme Court's judgment. Stuffing the House of Lords with Tory party donors, VIP lanes for COVID contracts, and even dodgy donations to decorate Downing Street. This is who the Prime Minister is. It is who he has always been. As Prime Minister, he has done exactly what it says on the tin. But the real point is this, and with every day that passes, and every day he stays in power, it is who the entire Conservative Party has now become.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way. He's making a very measured and powerful speech that will strike a chord with the electorate in my area of all political persuasions who have been writing to me calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. What they are not surprised at is the repeated behaviour of the Prime Minister, the lame excuses and the pattern repeating over and over again. What is surprising is that the honourable members opposite are keeping him in office. Why does my honourable friend think that is the case?
Well, I have to say, I hope that members opposite listen very carefully to what my honourable friend has said. Because the power to remove the Prime Minister rests with them. It rests with them. Because they can submit their letters to the 1922 committee. They can recognise the damage that this Prime Minister is causing to the fabric of our democracy, and yes, to the integrity and the honesty and the decency of this House. It is just, well, you know, here we go. Once again, the Conservatives want us to sit down and shut up. They don't wish to hear the voices of us that are here to represent our constituents, that quite frankly are appalled at the way that the Prime Minister has laughed at the people of these Isles with his behaviour over COVID. So, if members vote down this motion, not only are they endorsing all those scandals and all that sleaze, they are handing the Prime Minister a blank cheque to do it over again, and I would be surprised if the honourable gentleman opposite me would accept the scandals, the sleaze, the corruption, and is prepared to give the Prime Minister a blank cheque. Because I don't want to. If he wants to do that, he can rise and he can explain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course he's right to be surprised, because of course I'm appalled, and that's why I was encouraging him to sit down, because if he would just let us speak, he might advance his own cause. Some of us actually are extremely disappointed, but I will just say while I've got the floor, he, I think, heard what I said on Tuesday. He's a brother in Christ. Does he not believe in redemption?
I believe, Mr. Speaker, in truth and justice. And I believe that when a Prime Minister has misled the House, that he should face the appropriate sanctions. Mr. Speaker, I know you understand that I couldn't...
My honourable argument, but the gentleman opposite talks about a contrite position. Does he not agree when the Conservative Party at Prayer attacks the very foundations of the Church of England? We should be taking no lectures from them on being contrite or reconciled sinners.
I have to say, we've had the usual deflection from the Prime Minister over the course of the last few days. And to see the Archbishop of Canterbury being traduced the way that he was,
The established church.
by the Prime Minister, the established church of their nation, to be traduced in such a way, my goodness, how utterly shameful. One more time and then I'll make some comments.
I thank the honourable gentleman giving way. And on the issue of Christian forgiveness, I wonder if it's worth pointing out to the House that before you can have Christian forgiveness, you first must have confession and contrition, neither of which we've seen from the Prime Minister.
Well, of course, how we get confession from a Prime Minister that denies everything, I just don't know. Mr. Speaker, I know you understand that I couldn't let this motion pass without a special word for the spineless Scottish Tories. Because in fairness, the Scottish Tory leader is probably the only person in the Conservative Party who finds himself in a deeper hole than the Prime Minister. In fact, he's so far down that political hole that he obviously found it impossible to dig his way out and make it down to London to vote his boss out tonight. Now, I know and understand that plenty of people back home are looking forward to the Scottish Tories being given a straight red in the council elections in a few weeks. For most people,
That's democracy. Democracy, eh?
there we go again, and I hope the people in Scotland are watching this, because what we see are the Conservatives trying to shout down parliamentarians in this House. That's what's happening, Mr. Speaker. For most people, it is very understandable. It is very understandable. There's Scotland's answer from the Tories. Let's shout Scotland down, because that's what they're doing this afternoon. For most...
Can we just calm down? I do want to hear the honourable gentleman, and I know he wants to get back on track. He doesn't want to distract from the importance of the debate. Ian Blackford.
Mr. Speaker, you know, for most people, it's very understandable that their main reaction to the flip-flopping Scottish Tory leader on his support for the Prime Minister is disbelief and justified anger. But I have to admit, when I reflect on the position of the Scottish Tory leader, my main reaction is something that I know he'll appreciate far, far less. I actually feel sorry for him, because he's by no means the first person to have his career ruined by the Prime Minister. That particular pile of people is a mountain high by this stage, because ultimately everybody, and I mean everybody, is eventually thrown under the Boris bus. As we saw yesterday, not even the Archbishop of Canterbury is safe. Clearly the days of the Church of England being the Conservative Party at Prayer are long gone. The Prime Minister's party are obviously praying to another god these days, though no doubt even that won't guarantee their salvation. But in all seriousness, Mr. Speaker, that unjustified attack on the Archbishop gives another toxic insight into the thinking and methodology of the Prime Minister. Because his modus operandi is very simple, and it's this. When he finds himself under political pressure, finds someone else to blame, anyone else, just as long as he never takes responsibility himself. Because nothing and nobody else matters. The only thing that does matter is that this Prime Minister will stop at nothing to save his own skin. That is why members opposite should not save him today. Think about it. He wouldn't even lift his finger to help them. So if they have any self-respect, they need to ask themselves, why should they even be contemplating walking through the lobbies for him? Mr. Speaker, let me end on this point. It might surprise members that as a party that is so unapologetically seeking out of this very institution and out of this Parliament, I actually do care how it acts, how it operates, and the values that it holds. And I care deeply for this reason. Because today's motion isn't just about this Parliament or this place. We should all know by now that democracy and decency are under assault the world over. And Mr. Speaker, if we fail to defend these values in every single institution we are part of, these values will decay and decline. It was George Orwell who famously said that political chaos is connected with the decay of language. And I know that people are deeply fearful about just how real that prophecy has felt in the last few years. Because when language decays, so does the truth, and so does trust in our politics. A Prime Minister who can't be trusted with the truth marks the end of that very dangerous decline. So, if today is about anything, it has to be about finally ending that decline. That decline didn't start with this Prime Minister, but it needs to end with him. Because we should all be very clear to what the consequences are if this House fails to act today. If we don't act, if we don't stop, then this Parliament will be endorsing a new normal in this Parliament and across our politics. A new normal where no one is held responsible, where no one is held to account, and where no one ever resigns. And that is exactly why this motion matters, because it can and it will only ever become a new normal if we put up with it. It only becomes normal if those responsible aren't held to account and aren't made to answer for their actions. So I would genuinely ask members from across the House, but especially those members opposite, if they have any interest in maintaining some dignity and decency in public life, they should finally hold this Prime Minister to account for his actions and remove him from office. They should support this motion, and they should submit their letters of no confidence, and they should finally show this Prime Minister the door.
William Ragg.